They say a father's job is to protect his daughter from the harshness of the world. But what do you do when the harshest blow you ever receive comes directly from the hands of your own father? My name is Ava Bennett, and for 24 years, I believed that love was something unconditional. I believed that family meant a safe harbor when the rest of the world turned its back on you. I grew up in a comfortable home, always striving to make my father proud, always trying to be the perfect daughter. I worked long hours at his real estate firm, pouring my heart and soul into building his legacy, sacrificing my own dreams just to see a glint of approval in his eyes. But what I didn't know that day, the day my entire world shattered into a million unfixable pieces, was that to my father, I wasn't a daughter at all. I was just a liability. I was an afterthought. It all started on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I accidentally uncovered a massive financial discrepancy in our company's records. Someone had been siphoning millions, framing our primary accounts to look completely legitimate while draining the company dry. Out of panic and deep concern, I brought the documents directly to my father's private office, thinking we needed to call the authorities immediately. But when I laid the files on his mahogany desk, his face didn't register shock. It registered a cold, calculated anger. He didn't look at the papers. He looked right through me. It turned out that the person behind the fraud wasn't a rogue employee. It was my father, alongside my older sister, Chloe. They had been restructuring the family assets for months, planning to push me out entirely so they could divide the fortune between themselves. Before I could even process the weight of their betrayal, my father stood up, his voice dripping with venom. He didn't offer an explanation. Instead, he coldly informed me that my services were no longer required, that my name had been legally stripped from the family trust, and that I was no longer welcome under his roof. He called me a freeloader, a burden who had done nothing but ride on his coattails. Within an hour, my belongings were packed into trash bags and thrown onto the wet driveway. As I stood there in the pouring rain, watching the gates of my childhood home slam shut, my heart didn't just break, it turned to ash. But the ultimate humiliation was yet to come. Later that exact same evening, as I sat in a cramped, cheap motel room shivering from the cold, my phone lit up with social media notifications. I clicked on Chloe's profile, and my breath caught in my throat. My father hadn't just kicked me out. He was throwing a massive, lavish garden party to actively celebrate my departure. The banners read a fresh start, and the videos showed my father raising a glass of champagne, laughing cheerfully, toast after toast, celebrating the fact that he had finally gotten rid of me. The humiliation was public, loud, and utterly devastating. The days that followed the public execution of my dignity were the darkest days of my life. I woke up every morning with a heavy, suffocating weight on my chest, wondering how a parent could possess such a profound capacity for cruelty. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the video of my father laughing, the clinking of glasses, and the mocking smiles of the people I called my family. I felt completely broken, utterly discarded like yesterday's garbage. I had no money, no home, and a reputation that my father had carefully tarnished in our professional circle to ensure no one else would hire me. He had told everyone I was fired for incompetence and theft. For 2 weeks, I lived on instant noodles and tears in that tiny, suffocating motel room. I went through the classic stages of grief, begging the universe to tell me what I had done to deserve such a brutal twist of fate. But amidst that deep, paralyzing pain, a slow shift began to occur within me. The tears started to dry, and in their place, a quiet, freezing resolve began to take root. I realized that crying wouldn't rewrite the past, and mourning a father who never truly loved me was a waste of my remaining spirit. My pain slowly transformed into an unshakable, burning strength. They wanted me to disappear into poverty and shame, but I decided I was going to survive, if only to prove them wrong. I gathered the remaining fragments of my courage and contacted an old, retired investor named Arthur Pendleton. Arthur had been a bitter rival of my father years ago, but he was a man of immense integrity who had always respected my work ethic. I set up a meeting with him, carrying a laptop that contained the only things my father couldn't take from me: my knowledge, my strategies, and a completely legal, independent digital real estate platform blueprint I had developed in my spare time over the last year. When I presented the project to Arthur, I didn't hide my situation. I told him everything. I told him how my father had cast me aside, how he had celebrated my downfall with a party, and how he was currently cooking the books at his own firm. Arthur looked at the data, looked into my determined eyes, and smiled. He saw the genius in my platform, and more importantly, he saw a fire in me that no amount of rain could extinguish. He offered me a partnership and a significant seed investment on the spot. For the next 10 days, I worked 20 hours a day. I didn't sleep, I didn't rest, and I didn't look back. We launched the platform under a quiet, neutral parent company because I knew my father's clients inside out, their needs, their complaints, and exactly how much they were being overcharged. I targeted them with surgical precision. I offered them a more transparent, highly efficient digital alternative that eliminated the fraudulent overheads my father depended on. One by one, major clients began to quietly migrate to our platform. My father was so busy celebrating his perceived victory and spending money he hadn't yet earned that he completely failed to notice the ground crumbling right beneath his feet exactly 2 weeks after the night of that humiliating garden party. The house of cards my father built finally collapsed. The sudden loss of his top 3 premier clients triggered a massive audit by his primary lenders because he and Chloe had heavily manipulated the financial records to hide their fraud and fund their lavish lifestyles. The missing millions were instantly flagged by the federal auditors. Within 48 hours, his firm's bank accounts were completely frozen. His credit lines were pulled, and the prestigious Bennett real estate firm was declared functionally bankrupt. I was sitting in my brand new, sunlit corner office overlooking the city when my secretary informed me that a man was downstairs, desperately demanding to see me without an appointment. I told her to let him up. The door opened, and in walked my father. But he was no longer the arrogant, untouchable man who had thrown my clothes into the mud. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and his face was pale with absolute terror. Behind him stood Chloe, weeping silently, unable to look me in the eye. My father walked across the room, his hands trembling. He looked at me, then looked around at the thriving enterprise I had built in a mere fortnight. Without a word of greeting, he fell to his knees right in front of my desk. He grabbed the edge of my table, tears streaming down his face, and began to beg. He pleaded for mercy, asking me to use my new company's capital to bail him out, to tell the auditors that the financial discrepancies were just an internal accounting error. He swore he loved me, claimed that kicking me out was just a desperate act of tough love to see me grow, and promised to give me 50% of his ruined company if I saved him from prison. I looked down at him, feeling a strange mix of pity and profound detachment. The man who had celebrated my destruction was now begging, on his knees, for my salvation. I calmly removed his hands from my desk and stood up. I told him that justice hits differently when it comes from your own actions. I told him that I wouldn't seek active revenge against him, but I would absolutely not interfere with the consequences of his own choices. I refused to bail him out. As security escorted them out of the building, a deep sense of peace washed over me. I realized that true revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about building yourself up so high that their toxicity can no longer touch you. My father taught me a brutal lesson about betrayal, but he also inadvertently taught me my own worth. I lost a family, but I found my destiny, leaving the past behind to finally step into the light of my own making.